I'm Christy.
And I'm Kathy.
And this is The Psychic
And the Skeptic. Welcome back to The Psychic and the Skeptic. And on this episode, we're continuing our Civil War Ghost series with Part 3 and the Battle of Shiloh. We started Part 1 with the Battle of Fort Sumter, where the battle began. And last week was Part 2 with the Battle of Bull Run. So if you missed those and you like a chronological history, go back and take a listen to those.
And we're also going to be taking a step back into time with these battles, of course, because the Civil War happened about mid-1800s. So with this battle, it's going to be April of 1862. Also one of the most bloodiest battlefields and a place where just thousands of people died. And so, of course, where you've got a lot of traumatic deaths, you're going to have those tales of ghostly sightings.
And I'll separate what's historically documented from what might be psychological, environmental, or cultural interpretation.
So as a matter of fact, this past weekend, our group took a trip to Mineral Wells, Texas, and we were investigating the Hill House. This house is very active. I would say probably one of the more active places that we've investigated. And a unique thing happened. We had investigated this place back in November of last year, so in 2025, and we recorded this loud, I don't know if I call it a shot or a bang.
Yeah.
But this house supposedly has this history. Now, we couldn't find it documented, but supposedly there was a woman who was shot with a shotgun on the stairs. With that said, not only did we record this loud bang or shot, whatever you want to call it, the last time, we recorded it again this time. And we compared the two, and it sounded very familiar. The only thing different is Jill's audio, and hi, Jill, from ABI. You can hear this scoot and then bang sound. So I don't know, is this residual? Is it?
Right. This was the second time the team went to investigate. And the first time we were there, that sound happened around 7 in the morning, was it? And it woke us all up. We were sleeping. And
this time it was recorded in the evening.
Yeah, the second time was in the evening. So it's not consistent with what we would consider to be residual, but it doesn't always have to be the same time of day every day. It's confusing because the theory behind residual is that the conditions have to be the same for it to happen, like a movie playing over and over again.
Right.
So what kind of environmental conditions need to be in place? That's the question. That's what the skeptic wants to know. It's like, all right, is it weather? Is it time? Is it the charge in the air? Does there have to be a storm in place for these things to play over and over again?
Now, we did have a thunderstorm that rolled through while we were there, but we didn't have that the first time.
We didn't have it the first time. No.
Right.
And so what are those conditions? That's the thing. What makes something residual? Because that is not a spirit or a ghost. That is energy, like a hologram, if you were to see any kind of apparition, but an auditory echo in time and in space. And it just takes a lot to pull that out and just chalk it up to, all right, this is residual,
right,
versus intelligent.
And we're definitely going to have to do a case file.
Sure.
On
this
house.
Is a big one. I wasn't there for this second investigation, but I've gone through and listened to some of the audio that you guys have brought back from that one. But I was there for that first investigation.
Right.
And it's very interesting. It makes the skeptic kind of come in and wonder about. My first thought is, all right, who's hiding in the walls, making noises? Because this is way too active. There's no evidence that the person who owns the property is there. I mean, those are things that we look into.
Right. It was such an active investigation, and we were posting things, of course, on our Facebook page, and we gained probably about, I don't know, close to 75 new followers. Our podcast is linked through our paranormal research team. And so we were noticing that we had gained a lot of followers, and our international listener base has really grown. And we want to say thank you to all of our listeners, not only in the United States, but also around the world. So I know we have Singapore, We've got, let's see here, going down through the line, Australia, Portugal, Japan.
Uzbekistan.
Yes, thank you. That's a hard one to pronounce. United Kingdom, Venezuela.
We're bouncing all over east and west.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, Australia, New Zealand, all over. We've got a couple of listeners here and there, but we wanted to
Acknowledge.
let you guys know that we see you, and that's very interesting. I'm real curious about what brings you to our podcast as an international listener. What makes you curious?
And we even have some in Canada, Iraq, Lebanon, Ukraine,
Cyprus, South Africa, Pakistan,
India.
Kyrgyzstan, New
Oh.
Zealand. Oh, wait, we already mentioned New Zealand, I think, but this is a different town.
We even got the Republic of Congo. So over in the continent there for Africa.
Yeah, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco.
Yeah. Sweden, France.
Hey, UK, you're in there. You're okay in the UK, right? We're okay in okay.
Right, in Oklahoma.
Right.
But we got Sweden, France, Hungary, Norway.
Hello, Europe.
Yes. Uruguay, Dominican Republic, of course,
Argentina. South Africa, Dominican, Mexico, El Salvador, Venezuela, Ecuador, Colombia. Lots in South America. Yep.
Chile.
Argentina, I think we've seen a few there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
A lot of international listeners, and we just want to say thank you so very much. And we are always open to suggestions. And if you have something like a cryptid from your own country, write us in. Let us know.
We'd love to feature something that's not from our area. Let's look into it and share what your culture believes about certain cryptids that are out there. We can feature that on our podcast. If you write us in and you want us to shout out your name, let us know. We'll mention you on the podcast.
Yeah.
But so we have a Gmail account, psychicandskeptic@gmail.com. You can write us there. Or if you want to go to our Facebook page, The Psychic and the Skeptic, on Facebook, you can message us there and let us know what you think about our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always up for new suggestions, guys. All right, Kathy, should we get back into the Battle of Shiloh and maybe giving the history?
Yes.
So this occurred April 6th and 7th, a 2-day event of 1863, and was also nicknamed the Battle of Pittsburgh Landing because it was near Pittsburgh Landing in Hardin County, Tennessee. Now, this was a major Union victory that resulted, though, in about 24,000 casualties, making it the bloodiest battle in American history at that time. Now, again, if you haven't seen the Civil War map that we created for all these, you can go back and check that out. I try to post that each week to our Facebook and Instagram page. But the Confederate forces launched this surprise attack on Ulysses S. Grant's army. Now, Grant was for the North, of course, but the Confederate forces were driven back by these reinforcements, and it pretty much shattered the Confederate hopes of blocking the Federal advance into the Mississippi. Now, if you recall from the previous episode, the Confederates had a couple of major victories before this with the Battle of Bull Run, and so they were feeling pretty cocky and pretty, hey, we got our stuff together. Then the Union comes in and just knocks them on their butt on this one.
So there are 4 key locations with this battle that we're going to share with you, give you a little history and what's going on with the paranormal today in these locations. And they are Shiloh Church, Hornet's Nest, Bloody Pond, and Peach Orchard. So we'll start with Shiloh Church and the surrounding woods. This is a small Methodist church and a small structure, a little log cabin looking thing. Built in the 1850s, it served as a focal point and headquarters for the Union with General William T. Sherman before being severely damaged during the April 1862 Battle of Shiloh. This was used as a hospital immediately following the fighting, which I think they did that with any standing structure or at least partial structure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, immediately following the fighting. The original, quote, House of Peace was later destroyed. So the site located within what is now the Shiloh National Military Park became a key landmark in the fight for Western Tennessee. So there's a structure that is there now. It's a replica, and it looks really close to what the church looked like before this battle. So it's a very small log cabin. There's a little historic marker, and we'll be posting pictures as we usually do, so you can go in and see for yourself if you'd like to visualize this. It had 2 entrances, and it's pretty humble, this little structure.
Yeah, well, you got to think churches and things were not as big and elaborate as they are today. Yeah, I guess you were lucky if you could get people in church. Well, that's the funny thing. I think back then, more people probably went to church than what people do today.
Right, so
but
they
yet,
needed a spot here and a spot there,
yeah,
like a neighborhood church.
right.
Maybe. But for a long time, for decades, there wasn't anything on the spot. They wanted to rebuild and memorialize this space.
Of
So a
course.
modern, simple structure was constructed in 1952 to represent the historic church. And then a reproduction of the original 1862 log church was built on the site in 2001, and they used historical records to recreate this. So that's neat. They even have some written accounts, diaries, journals, letters from people. And one Union soldier had multiple diaries. So there's a quote from these diaries that's paraphrased that says, "We were awakened by the roar of musketry, men running in all directions." So indicating that this was a chaotic time. This was a surprise attack. So the Union wasn't aware.
That's awful scary. I even think about, even in today's time with war, how it must feel. Because we don't really experience a lot of that over here in the United States right now. And I can't imagine being some of these people that are experiencing war firsthand, but waking up to it like this as well when you're in a peaceful sleep or trying to have a peaceful sleep
Yeah.
anyway, to war.
Right.
That must just be an awful experience.
And the tactics were changing. It used to be a planned thing. You had everybody line up and just go. It's just not the way it works. And things were changing even during the Civil War with the surprise attack. And you get them when they're not expecting.
And for all of our listeners, any listeners out there who are experiencing war today, you are in our thoughts. And we just want to say that you're on our mind, you're in our thoughts, and we are just so sorry that this is occurring right now to you and in your country. And war is just horrible.
Right. Yeah. And these are soldiers too. So they are geared up and ready for battle. But you don't always know when battle's going to happen. And the point being that this is going to bring on that emotional response to trauma and horror as what war does to us.
Connecting to more of that residual type haunting.
Today, this is a popular site. It's a serene stop on the Shiloh National Military Park. You can drive through. There's a driving tour that they have, so you can just see it and all the other sites fairly quickly without having to walk all these distances. And it's managed by the National Park Service. Over 100,000 soldiers were involved, and more than 23,000 became casualties in just 2 days.
That's a lot of people that lost their lives. Wow.
Yeah, and the terrain around there is like really thick woods, and there's scattered fields here and there, which brings us to that peach orchard that we'll talk about later and Hornet's Nest. With that many casualties in 2 days, and this little church was in the middle of it, it makes sense with that kind of serenity that people feel when they're there. I wonder if that's paranormal.
So when we look at the type of ghostly phenomenon that visitors say that they experience, of course, it's hearing that gunfire echoing through the woods here. They see these shadowy soldiers that move between the trees. They feel watched. Some reports of being touched. Now, when it comes to recorded evidence, I wouldn't say visitors are trying to record paranormal things, but
Some might be.
maybe, yes. But people have said that they've got these strange white mists that show up in their photographs, and then they have equipment malfunctions like batteries draining, etc. Now, something to keep in mind is that this location also served as a field hospital because there were so many casualties.
And all of that aligns with common battlefield reports, these historical places,
Mm-hmm.
especially Civil War sites. People frequently feel like they hear phantom gunfire and marching sounds, and a lot of that can be explained. This is a heavily wooded area, so sounds can carry really well in these kind of environments. I grew up with some woods in my backyard, and I remember you hear like an acorn fall in the distance and it echoes through all the trees, and it can sound like a far off distant gunshot
Mm-hmm.
if it hits just right on some hollow wood or dried up branches or something in the trees. So you come in to tour this area, you know a bloody battle occurred here. So your senses are already heightened and
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking about war, and maybe you're expecting paranormal activity because of the stories you've heard. So that can set our brains up for having this expectation and interpreting almost like an auditory pareidolia or even visually with the photographs.
And I know you're not real big on
Oh, yeah,
photographs,
definitely not.
for
I mean, if
sure.
if it was in your photo, it should have been something you could see with your own eyes. That's just how photography works. The photo is going to capture what our eyes see, and even our cameras aren't going to see as well as our physical eyes do. So whatever you capture should be something that should be seen.
Yeah, but does that make sense with the light spectrum and how our eyes can only see a small amount compared to
Yeah,
what's really out there?
right. Camera in a photograph sees even less than that.
Oh, I was thinking that would see more.
Only if you have a full spectrum camera that can go into the ultraviolet and the infrared.
Okay.
Which is why that's what we use on our investigations. We have our night camera, we have the full spectrum, we also have thermal camera, thermal imaging to see what our eyes don't see. But the average cell phone camera or digital camera is going to cut off some of that light spectrum just ever so slightly on either end.
And I'm curious about the white mist and stuff. I know that, like, when we investigate, we hold our breath when we take a photograph if the
Right.
temperature is
Right.
52 degrees or below.
So if you're not a trained paranormal investigator, you may not know. Hold your breath in cooler environments to avoid some of these mists from showing up. And maybe you didn't see it. You probably could have seen it, but you weren't paying attention to it because you're looking off in the distance and it happens to show up in your photo.
Right.
So, I mean, there's lots of logical explanation, although I'm an open skeptic. It's possible that some of these people could have caught actual phenomenon. We're just not there to really rule out all the other possibilities and all the other logical and more likely explanations for what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to the Hornet's Nest. So, the Hornet's Nest was another location within this battle, and it, of course, like we talked about, happened in April of 1862 as part of this Battle of Shiloh. Now, with that said, what was going on was that the Union's defensive position along this sunken road, held by the brigades under W.H.L. Wallace and Benjamin Prentiss from the Confederates, gave it its name because of how the bullets were buzzing through the brush.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've heard of the hornet's nest. I remember like from probably school history,
Mm-hmm.
and the name stuck out to me, but that's
Now,
cool.
now you learn. Yeah. So the bullets were just whirling and buzzing through this brush like angry hornets, thus
Oh.
the hornet's nest. Now, defenders repulsed over a dozen attacks before surrendering here, stalling the Confederate advance. So, some key aspects of this is that this position was in the center of the Union line, and it provided a firm base that prevented a quick Confederate victory. Now, the defense, the Union troops, including the 2nd, 7th, 12th, and 14th Iowa regiments, held this position for hours under intense fire. The Confederate generals, such as Braxton Bragg and Claiborne, led numerous failed charges. Now, the breaking point occurred about 5 p.m. when Confederates under General Daniel Ruggles assembled over 50 cannons, the largest concentration of artillery seen in the Americas at this time, to shell the position. Now, surrounded and low on ammunition, roughly 2,200 Union soldiers, including General Prentiss, they surrendered, but their stand allowed General Grant to reorganize and secure a stronger defensive line near the Tennessee River. Now, this site is a major feature at the Shiloh National Military Park and noted for the high number of casualties sustained by both sides. Of course, at this location, you're going to have visitors say, hey, they hear men crying for help or shouting commands. You have that phantom drumming off in the distance. Yeah.
So the drums and the marching is what we've heard in other battles too.
Mm-hmm.
So the same explanations, although distant machinery, or we mentioned like the trumpets before, like some kid in a neighborhood is practicing
His bugle.
his bugle. But something we didn't talk about was woodpeckers pecking. I mentioned the acorn dropping, but maybe it's something like some other animals in there, or those are the shadows they see going through.
Yeah, thinking
You know?
about like the woodpecker on the drumming, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could see
Or
that.
are there deer in the area? You would think that would be what our first thought is, but the psychological component of all of this, you're already at a spooky place where lots of people died, so your brain is thinking ghosts, potentially. If you've heard of other people say, oh, that place is really haunted,
Mm-hmm.
and wait till we get to Gettysburg.
Oh, I know. That's the one I'm looking forward to most of all.
Right? So it's like your brain's already ready to be expecting paranormal activity.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Of
could be a
course.
lot of the explanation behind some of these experiences.
Yeah.
Our next location is Bloody Pond.
This is a cool one.
Yes.
Mhm.
So not to be confused with Bloody Pond for our UK listeners.
Oh, bloody hell. I don't do a good.
Literally Bloody Pond.
Yeah, I don't do a good UK accent. Sorry. No offense.
Neither do I. No, that was out of respect to our UK listeners.
Correct.
So Bloody Pond is a pretty well-known location in Shiloh National Military Park. It's a landmark where legend says that wounded soldiers and horses from both sides would go and drink or wash wounds, and some died right next to this pond during this April 1862 battle, and it turned the water red, according to legend. This particular pond that we know today is located near a peach orchard, and it represents the severe violence and suffering. And there's some Union artillery exhibits nearby, but they're not real sure that's the pond that most of the soldiers came to. Now, if there are other ponds in the area, there's probably soldiers at different spots
Mm-hmm.
all throughout this battle, using the water there, washing wounds, drinking from it, getting some rest. Some crawling towards this pond, seeking water. If you're losing blood, you're getting dehydrated. And so they probably went to this pond to recover, meanwhile collapsing and dying in this location. It is known that the ponds would fill up with blood and take on a red color. So it serves as a potent, lasting symbol of the intense brutality of the 1862 battle. And there's a little marker, if you're there in modern day, that points out that this particular pond they call Bloody Pond. The story behind Bloody Pond, or Red Pond as some people call it, has been told years after the battle, making this exact location more legend instead of having actual proof that this is the particular pond from this story. This area, of course, was heavily fought over. The 11th Louisiana and the 22nd Tennessee divisions were active in this vicinity, so this likely could have been the pond that they all went to for refuge. But it is a feature in the battlefield tour, and while many reports say that this story is authentic, some accounts indicate that it's a mix of wartime horror and post-war lore, remaining one of the most famous sites of this particular battle.
So some of the phenomenon that surrounds this area is that the water turns red, and it's from the ghost blood of the past. But there's also apparitions of wounded soldiers said around the pond, crawling toward the pond, and then this intense feeling of dread.
Yeah, I guess that would be pretty alarming. In modern day, you walk up to this area, you're touring, and the pond is literally red, like it was back then.
Yeah, there is a logical explanation for
Yes.
that.
There's a red algae that is
Mhm.
known, and they see the algae to this day. So at certain times of the year, it might bloom and take control naturally over this pond.
And I'm on the skeptic side here. I do believe that the red is from the algae. It's not the blood of the past soldiers.
Yeah, but if you didn't know that was a thing in this area and you walk up and this pond is red, you definitely need to check out the pictures on our Facebook page and Instagram to see. But from a distance, it looks like bright red arterial blood.
Ooh.
Yeah, actually didn't know that could exist in still water like a pond because I lived in an area in Florida where we had what's called red tide in the
The red
Gulf
algae.
of Mexico, the red algae.
Mm-hmm.
So we know about that phenomenon there, and that's creepy to see too. And
Right.
you don't want to swim in the water when it's like that, but
It's just neat that occurs in such an area like this and so close to Peach Orchard.
it's neat that nature has this red algae, and how ironic that it happens in a location where people did seek refuge at this pond or any other ponds in the area to get water. And I'm sure during the battle, the water was probably red at that time. So the story and the legend carried over.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, this red algae shows up too. It's just coincidence. And I'm pulling from the skeptic on this in that maybe it's like nature's bow to what happened and nature's reminder to us that
Such
this-
tragedy took place.
this was a thing here too, and people
Mhm.
and horses and came to this area and died here. So
Of course.
it's almost like a natural memorial to the
Mhm.
soldiers
Yeah.
and to the horses.
Absolutely. So another one of these areas where the Battle of Shiloh was fought was known as Peach Orchard. Originally, this was a farm that belonged to a woman by the name of Sarah Bell, and she had beautiful peach trees. A lot of these were just beautiful blooms, and it was a very pivotal location for the Confederate attacks against the Union troops. So now this orchard was situated between the Confederate and Union lines, and it was a focal point for several Confederate charges during the first day of the battle. So remember, this is a 2-day battle, okay? You had the close range combat, and at Peach Orchard, you had bullets and things that were just tearing through these beautiful blossoming trees. So it's April, it's spring, when the trees were in full bloom. Now,
Peaches.
I know, right? Not the peaches. But the fighting really involved numerous artillery pieces, like 86 different guns were in this area. So that's why the trees were tore up so bad. You had Confederate General Albert Sidney Johnston, who was shot behind the knee, and he died. It was right near the orchard, and he died shortly after being shot. Then, of course, you had Bloody Pond that we talked about that was nearby. Now, after this battle was done, the orchard was totally destroyed, unfortunately. And it was just an open field for a long time, and now a part of that National Military Park. Now, the NPS, National Military Park, has made several attempts to restore this orchard back to its 1862 appearance, which I think is neat and cool. And in 2008, they planted 72 different trees.
Oh.
And I know, isn't that great? And then in 2021, they planted 3-year-old June gold peach trees, which have struggled to survive there because of the weather and also wildlife. But today,
yes, I have 2 peach trees in my backyard, and the deer are always getting the low-hanging fruit, so we have to
Yep.
kind of beat them to it.
I remember the fence you put up and around it to try
Yeah.
to keep the deer out of it, and the deer were just jumping over it.
Yes.
But today they do have the site marked by different monuments and artillery exhibits, and it is known as a major stop on the historical tour given by the National Military Park.
So claims here, there's a young boy apparition, possibly a drummer. That's usually what young boys would do during this battle.
Right.
And that was a way to communicate for the troops that were fighting. But the other unique thing about this spot is that there's a wounded soldier figure that disappears and reappears and moves aimlessly in and out of spaces unnaturally. If there was an actual person there, it just wouldn't make sense that they'd be walking through certain
Is he
things.
walking through the peach trees?
Yeah, something like yeah, the ones that are planted there now. That's why I think people are questioning what they're seeing because it's just doesn't fit the normal. Some of those explanations with the heat waves, if you're looking directly at something like across the horizon, it can make it appear like something's moving out there and disappearing. So it depends on what that person's actually seeing. Is
Right.
it this heat? These are things you have to consider if you're out there and you're thinking you're witnessing. You try to rule out all the logical explanation. And if that's not the case, there could be peripheral vision illusions. And of course,
See,
you're
now the
already
more
thinking
my
you could see something paranormal because you hear
Mhm.
the place is haunted. So your brain could be playing tricks on you. But think about the setup. We're talking about Civil War again. And we've mentioned on this podcast before that the history for a location is super important because it gives us information for the setup. Is there the potential for possible paranormal activity to occur? And when you have that much trauma and death, that heightens those chances.
Absolutely, and I think that's for any war, not just the Civil War,
Exactly.
any type yeah, because it's
Right.
all
And
traumatic.
this was unique for the United States that this was a major battle on our soil. So we don't really have any other big, large events where lots of people have died. So it makes sense
Mhm.
that we would have these emotions when we go visit these places that could influence what we think we're seeing, or we might have the potential for actual paranormal activity.
And I think trying to put myself in the shoes of the actual soldiers, there were some soldiers who were shot or wounded. They didn't die right away. Can you imagine trying to lay there at night and then you start to hear these like moaning or cries for
Yeah,
help
people
of
as
your
they're
fellow
dying,
soldiers?
they're suffering.
Yes, that's
Not all
horrible.
injuries result in immediate death.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, that would just be horrible to try to sit there and hear. That
Yeah,
would be
and it's
so hard.
documented in diaries and other records that many could hear them crying out in the darkness. So there's that one overnight 2-day battle. So the night
Mhm.
between April 6th and April 7th was horrifying.
It was very much.
And today, people still can hear that moaning and that crying out for help at
Mhm.
night.
Well, and did you also know that, and I think I might have mentioned this in a previous episode, but there were so many deaths of so many soldiers so suddenly on these battlefields that there were mass graves. They couldn't bury everybody.
Right?
So a lot of times they would just dig a big hole and drop several of them in.
That's horrible.
Yes.
And that goes with some of the claims because some people say that they've seen orbs or lights
Mm-hmm.
hovering close to the ground,
Mm-hmm.
which could be fireflies. Who knows? You still have to rule out all the normal that can exist there.
Yeah.
Moisture droplets and light reflecting to it. Could that be a possibility of what's happening? Apparitions near these burial sites. Maybe some people are thinking there's just these open graves everywhere. So if they're marked, that might make sense. But out in a random field and you think you see an apparition, we don't necessarily need to be assuming that there's a burial ground there. But we get that a lot, I think, with Indian burial grounds here in Oklahoma. We have people who might write into us saying that they think that there's a burial ground underneath their house because they watched a movie in the 80s. I don't know. I think I'm
Yes.
rambling now, but
You hear that a lot. And our house was built on an Indian burial ground.
yeah,
It's like,
which goes
what?
very well with a movie.
I take that with a
Anyways,
grain of salt, though.
I
You know
might.
what I mean? I think
So,
that
but
there's
if it's a marked burial ground and you have an activity there, I can see how that could create some activity.
right? Overall, even science doesn't erase the feeling that people describe here with
Right.
the various things. And the heavy sorrow that I imagine is still there and felt by many visitors for this area.
Right. So science is just another lens, just something else to help someone narrow down the possibilities of what they're experiencing there. But I definitely agree that whether the presence they're feeling is supernatural or psychological, it's definitely powerful and that means something.
Oh, totally agree. All these emotions and everything that is going on that people experience. It can be in one location or all locations. And we've come across this even in past investigations where you go into a spot and it may feel heavy. And if you're
Right.
really sensitive to those emotions, there's a difference in the way places feel.
Right.
Definitely, I think the feelings and the things that people feel is a part of the paranormal. You can't have one without the other. It's included.
Psychology can explain that too if you know the history behind a location, but it still happens when people aren't aware of the history in a location when they walk into it, but yet they still can feel these emotions and these feelings.
Absolutely.
So write us in and let us know if you've ever been somewhere where you just felt this enormous heaviness Did you know about some kind of tragic history in that location, or did you find out later that something significant had happened there?
And then you're scratching your head like, oh, that's why.
Yes. That can be pretty eye-opening, right?
For sure.
Anything else?
I can't think of it like the Battle of Shiloh, just like all these other battles. It's all tragic. There's all some sort of paranormal activity that's going to be imprinted or experienced at these locations. But I think what's cool is there's these locations, the people that are affected, like the farms, the orchards, the churches.
The lives disrupted during that
Exactly.
time.
War
Both
is
civilian and-
horrible.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think learning about those different historical aspects, since we are kind of history nerds, is cool.
In school, we get general history about the Civil War, but we don't get into the personal history and what happened in these specific locations, these
Right.
churches, like you were saying, these
Right.
people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we hope that you are enjoying this series. We're going to take a break next week and bring something different in to mix things up for you.
We're doing a cryptid file, y'all.
Right. So stay tuned next week for another fun cryptid
Mhm.
episode. So you can find us wherever you enjoy your podcasts, and thank you for listening.
Because the paranormal is the normal.
Not yet understood.